Hello, friends. This is our third attempt to get an intro. I don't know. English is hard today.
Yeah.
Yep. Mike Erre here. Tim Stafford here. This is Voxology Podcast.
And some
It's
form and
December.
function.
Yes, it's December. And I've just not speaking well this morning. I played pickleball, and I don't know if that took something out of me or what.
Get your brain pickled.
Well, let me tell you something right now. Tim, my buddy Tim, I have a Tim in Nashville and I have a Tim in California. I have a Kevin in Nashville and a Kevin in Reno or in Nevada. And Tim and I, we went 5-1 against a lot of senior citizens this morning and felt very good about it. Felt very, very good about it. So there's no shame in this game is all I'm going to say.
There you go.
I want to say, Tim, before we dive in, I want to say thank you to a number of people who've joined our Patreon and Tidely support crew in the last couple of months. It's been absolutely amazing. We're so grateful. And just a reminder, because it's December and all the nonprofits talk about year-end giving, we are a solely crowd-funded enterprise. We're willing to pitch ridiculous products, but no one's interested in that. And we don't want to pitch sincere products. I mean, we want low T. I need some voodoo sort of low T enterprise that says, okay, here, this is grass from the Horn of Africa. And if you take this, then, your masculinity is restored or something. That's the kind of thing we're looking for.
The new Wild at Heart from Voxology.
Yes, Voxology's, we could call it mild at heart, which is what we are. So all that is to say, thank you.
That book writes itself.
And if you're sitting on a massive pile of money and you've given to all the worthy nonprofits out there, just a reminder, we're a 501c3 nonprofit too, and everything's tax deductible. And I want you to know that because of your generosity, we did a non-conference this year. We got a revamped website this year. We hired a consultant who put all of our stuff on YouTube this year. So, thank you. It's been a gracious gift. And if you would like to give, go to voxologypodcast.com. And there's a link to Patreon and there's a link to Tidely. Thank you for that. That means a lot. And a lot of you are very generous toward us. So thank you. Speaking of generosity, we're going to have another Christian nationalism segment today. Tim, I love the music. But I want to, it's particularly egregious this week, but I want to remind ourselves why it is that we do this. And so, I've been going through with a group of pastors. We've been going through Walter Brueggemann's book, 3 Prophetic Tasks, Grief. Let's see, what is it? Reality, Grief, and Hope, I think is the name of the book. And it's been absolutely more timely than I could have imagined.
Lines up with his orientation, disorientation. Wasn't he that?
Yes. Yeah. It kind of does. And it's it's really interesting. But the book, it asks the question, what is the prophetic posture of the church or of God's people in the Old Testament when Israel felt their chosenness and acted in a way that brought about idolatry and injustice. And then he draws parallels to American senses of chosenness and American exceptionalism and says, I wonder what the posture of God's people should be today. And though this is an older book, it's been really, really helpful. And I've very much enjoyed it. But he begins, and this is, so the reason we do This Week in Christian Nationalism is we're trying to inhabit these postures. And so his argument is, listen, the Jerusalem establishment was solidified in their behavior because of 3 factors. And we've talked about these before. Number 1, they were God's chosen people. Deuteronomy 14, you are a people holy to the Lord your God. It is you, the Lord, has chosen out of all the peoples on earth to be his people, his treasured possession. And that refrain gets just repeated over and over and over through Torah. And so, of course, and their chosenness, we know, was for a mission. But you can see how easy it would be over the course of generations for chosenness to become sort of an internal way of separating ourselves from everybody else. And that chosenness was also backed up by God's forever promise to have a king from the line of David to sit on the throne of Israel. Right? 2 Samuel, your house, David, and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. And then you have God's promise to dwell among his people forever and ever. And so you would look over at the temple where the living God dwelt, and you would look at the king and the monarchy and say, God's promise that there's a forever king. And so you would write Psalms that talk about how Jerusalem will never be shaken. And the prophets show up, and the prophets are saying it doesn't matter, because that same covenant that says you're his treasured possession also says that if you worship other gods, and if you misuse the poor and the foreigner, the widow and the orphan, and you do not let the land have its Sabbath, then you will be expelled from the land and sent into exile. And so we've been at our church community looking at Jeremiah. It's been absolutely fascinating. It's been great. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done, in the Bible, just because it's Jeremiah, and we don't ever spend time in Jeremiah. But Jeremiah, it has the covenant documents, Deuteronomy 28 through 30 in one hand, and then a list of Israel's failures. And for 4 decades, he cries out to Israel to change. Now, at this point, Israel has split into 2 kingdoms. The northern kingdom, which had gone into exile about 100 years before, and now the southern kingdom, just called the kingdom of Judah, but still with Jerusalem at its center. Jeremiah is standing there going, guys, if this doesn't change, the fate of the southern kingdom will be the same as the fate of the northern kingdom. It's just a different empire that will send us into exile. And so for 4 decades, with tears, with symbolic action, with threats, with anger, it's just a begging and a pleading of Israel to turn. Now, there are 3 prophetic postures that not only Jeremiah, but the whole host of prophets who are prophesying around this time. 3 postures that the prophets take. The first one is they keep naming the facts on the ground, the reality in the face of the ideology of chosenness.
Love it.
Nothing bad can happen to us because we have the Davidic king, we have the Lord and his temple, and we're God's chosen people. And so they just kept naming the reality, particularly around how neighbors were harmed, foreign gods were worshipped, and the land didn't receive its Sabbath rest. And so they were very specific charges. The second thing they would do is they would lament not only the future, if Israel didn't turn away from its current course, they would lament what was coming, but they also lamented the fact that Israel was in such a state. And the prophets would almost be God's lawyers to the nation, saying, this is what you agreed to, this is what the Torah says, and this is how you're living, and the vast disparity between them two. So not only would they point out the reality, but they would grieve the reality, that it was unacceptable. And then the third thing they did is they were, even in the midst of the darkest prophetic prophecies of destruction, there were purveyors of hope. That even their exile wouldn't have the last word, that they were still God's chosen people, and God still would have a covenant king, but it was so vastly different from what they assumed and presumed that the exile wouldn't be the final nail in Israel's coffin. And so they embodied these postures. Now, we see in America a very similar prophetic situation. We have American exceptionalism that doesn't need to be noted other than we see it in Christian nationalism. right? We're the most successful country that's ever existed because we were founded on Christian principles. Our country isn't as successful. It's being invaded and overrun. So we have to return to Christian principles. And tied into that, as we've talked about before, is a certain ethnic view and a certain religious view and a certain fiscal view, all wrapped together in this red bow. And so what is the prophetic posture of the church? Well, we name the facts on the ground. This isn't the healthiest president in the history of the world. This isn't the most just president in the history of the world. This isn't the great protector of children as he was announced. Right? I mean, this isn't the case. And it's particularly acute because the prophets only critiqued the people, right? The God's chosen people. The prophets at times spilled over into God's judgment against the nations. But often that was the result of something Israel had done, or Israel would do, or they would do to Israel. So it was still connected to Israel. So I think as individual voters, we have the right to critique certain policies and argue about certain systems and legislation and disagree over that. I think that's fine. But when the church claims for itself divine mandates, or when the state, claims for itself divine mandates and exercises in its own language divine prerogatives, then like the prophetic posture of exceptionalism has to be named with facts on the ground. And so that's the reason we do this. This is a big wind up into why do we keep talking about this? It's not just that we're complaining, but we're doing two things. We're lamenting and we're naming. And those two things the church has to do.
Yeah. I think I'm losing Instagram friends because all I do is post this stuff all day long, but it's like we're all getting kind of numb.
Of course.
To it.
Yes.
And it's like, but this morning was just it was like a mother who had a C-section and she was instantly ripped away from her newborn baby that's just sitting in the NICU. It was like it was all these non-threatening. It was just like mothers. It was like a string of mothers and young women getting abducted. And then the other thing is, it's like, it's just him calling every female reporter some derogatory name. It's just the history of sexism and racism from this one individual.
Mm-hmm. We're going to get
today.
Into
They
that.
Just canceled all the national park stuff it's no longer a national holiday for Juneteenth or MLK Day, but they made it his birthday. So it's just like,
yeah.
But you have to, you can't just sit quietly so I like that. When I've been talking with the people at the table church that we're at about doing like a lament service or whatever, I like that structure. Holding a thing where you name it, all of it, you grieve all of it. What was the third part?
And then you proclaim hope that none of this is the last word.
Yep. That's I like that.
Well, that's 3-part structure is what biblical lament is.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
We're doing Lamentations, which is right after Jeremiah for our church for Advent, and holy moly. I mean, this is what lament is. It's naming what's real. It's grieving in the presence of God, the disparity between the character of God and what's happening in the world. And then not every lament ends in a red bow, but some laments end in an expression of trust. Yahweh,
sometimes acknowledging them as much of the battle as something being whatever. Being able to grieve together, knowing you're not alone in your grief.
That's it.
Is very powerful.
So all of that. And
every time you say Jeremiah, all I can hear was a bullfrog.
That's it. He was. And before that, he was a prophet.
You just hear a bullfrog croaking. And it's just like, is that what he was? Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
And he was
a good friend of mine.
He was ignored. Well, who sang that?
Oh, it was an old one.
Yeah, I know it is an old one. But prophets critique their own. And we're not prophets for sure. But there is a prophetic enterprise that I think the church needs to take part of. That looks at American Christianity and holds it up to the teachings of Christ. And it simply says, hey, not so much.
What a profound statement. Take your Christianity and hold it up to the teachings of Christ.
Yes.
They don't match. Something's off.
I mean, all right. So this week, now you can do the theme song. This week in Christian nationalism. And God bless us, everyone. Some of this stuff is so straight out of the Roman Empire and the propaganda for Caesar. I mean, it literally, I'm not making this up. You can go back and read. It's like the golden age of peace and prosperity. I mean, it's like, oh my Lord, it's straight out of the Empire playbook. And so this week, the U.S. Department of Peace got a new name.
Just saw that this morning.
And so, so Marco Rubio, let me fire this up here. I got to find it. I thought, yeah, here it is. I got it. Marco Rubio's account: President Trump will be remembered by history as the president of peace. It's time our State Department display that. So the State Department said this morning, the State Department renamed the former Institute of Peace to reflect the greatest deal maker in our nation's history. Welcome to the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace. The best is yet to come. So that's awesome.
The irony is palpable. It's just like we're in like oatmeal of irony.
Yeah, you can't even write it. And again, we take it seriously because, I mean, we take it non-seriously and seriously, right? On the face of it, it's absolutely absurd. Here's an elderly man falling asleep in the middle of meetings, obviously receiving some sort of medical treatment, who can hardly put cogent sentences together. And everyone's like, this dude's the healthiest guy we've ever seen. He outworks us all. And you're going, my goodness, this is insanity. And here's a guy that's made so many deals, the Department of Peace. We're getting ready to invade Venezuela for the oil. And it is a openly debated question about whether or not we're actually murdering people in Venezuelan waters. And so, it's a
very lopsided debate.
The Department of Peace is just perfect. Or as Ted Cruz said, Mr. President, I think objectively on the merits, the case can be made. There's never been a president who has a greater positive impact on the children of America than you have.
It's unreal.
I mean, and again, it's propaganda, and they don't mean it. And we know they don't mean it. These are people that were incredibly, incredibly critical of President Trump a decade ago. We know they don't mean it. And this is all performative. But the church is the place where, we can't just sit and mock it. We can't just sit with scorn, but we have to just say, no, actually, to protect children would be to make sure Miss Maxwell is in prison forever, and to release the Epstein files, and to not rip parents away from children and children away from parents. He is objectively not a protector of children.
That's the thing, is like, it is all performative, but they did bomb those boats.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
So at the end of the day, like, you can,
but that's even
laugh
performative.
As much as we want.
But that's even performative.
But it's lives.
I know. The rant, I had to transcribe the rant against Somalis. And remember, a couple of Thursdays ago, I was in. We celebrated a Thanksgiving feast, our church did, with about 80 refugees who were here who were here learning English and studying the GED, and who were here believing differently, and all the things. And so we need to talk about this. So this is almost verbatim. There were a couple parts where he repeated himself that I cut out. But he slept through most of the meeting until we got to the very end. And then said Somalis ripped off that state, Minnesota, for billions of dollars every year, and they contribute nothing. The welfare is like 88%. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, to be honest with you. Their country is no good for a reason. Their country stinks. We don't want them in our country. I could say that about other countries too. We don't want them. We have rebuilt our country. Our country is at a tipping point. We could go bad. We're at a tipping point. We could go one way or the other. And we're going the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. And this was the part, of course, that, Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. And I'm not sure I see the world the same way she does. Well, in fact, I'm sure I don't see the world the same way she does. Absolutely. And we would disagree almost on everything. But she is not, in the words of Jesus of Nazareth, garbage. These aren't people who work. They are not people who say, let's work, come on, let's make this place great. They are people who do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing. They came from hell and they complain and do nothing but bitch. We don't want them in our country. Let them go back to where they came from and fix it. And you're like, okay, well, I'm not shocked, but again, an administration that's claiming for itself that he was spared for a reason, and that God spared his life so that he could make America great again in Jesus' name. The blatant racism here is off the charts. Combined with Caroline Leavitt the next day, I think the next day or maybe a couple of days after, asked about the immigrant invasion. So there's a press corps there that was just setting her up, saying, hey, we all know that unless immigrants assimilate, they're a threat and we're being invaded and blah, 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 and then asked the question. Her response was, the administration just issued a travel ban for 19 countries, including Afghanistan. Special immigrant visas used by many Afghans to get here have been, let's see, I misspelled the word, have been terminated or put on hold since the tragic shooting last week. Refugee admissions were suspended for Afghans on day one. Refugee admissions into the country right now are essentially at zero, with the exception of Afrikaners fleeing persecution in South Africa. So we will accept no refugees except white ones. Secretary Kristi Noem, I just met with the president. I'm recommending a full travel ban on every damn country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. Our forefathers built this nation on blood, sweat, and the unyielding love of freedom, not to mention a bunch of immigrants, slaves, and evil. Our forefathers built this nation on blood, sweat, and the unyielding love of freedom, not for foreign invaders to slaughter our heroes, suck dry our hard-earned tax dollars, and snatch the benefits owed, all caps, to Americans. We don't want them, not one. So this is the administration talking. And again, Kristi Noem, her department is tweeting out Bible verses over ICE videos, and Donald J. Trump wants to go to heaven. And this is where we just simply will not sit and go, oh, okay, this is, nope, not normal. You're not crazy. And we don't want to get tired. That's why we can't stay here. And that's why we don't stay here. That's why we go on to the Lord's Prayer. That's why we talk about things that do buoy us into hopefulness. But this is where we start. It's not where we finish. And I thought, Tim, that's enough. That's enough blatant racism for 1 week. Then I came across Valentina Gomez. And oh my goodness, just let me just, I didn't think it was real when I first saw it. So she's in front of some screen. She says, Texas, I've officially filed to become your next congresswoman. Now, I transcribe these things, just so I have to listen to them. So you have to listen to them too. So the choice is yours. Vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas, save your daughters from getting raped by Mohammed, and protect our soldiers from getting murdered in broad daylight. Let me be very clear. We will make Texas the worst place for groomers, terrorist Muslims, pedophiles, and illegals to live, so help me God. For me, this is just an election, but for you and your daughter, this is your life, because Texas has only gotten more Muslim under these weak Republicans. New York City already fell to Islam, so did Michigan and Minnesota, and you're next in line. If Texas falls to Islam, it's simply because you didn't vote correctly. God bless you all. Now, I saw this or heard this, and I went, there's no way that's real. And then I clicked on it, and the bio. Give you one guess. Are you ready? Valentina Gomez at Valentina for USA. Jesus is King. First line.
There it is.
There it is. Could have guaranteed it. And then, so I went to verify this was an actual thing. And that was one of the mildest ones.
Yeah, she had a few this week.
Oh my goodness. So I'm running for U.S. Congress. I will make Texas the worst place for terrorists, Muslims, and illegals. So help me God. For me, this is an election, but for you, this is your life. Jesus is king. So that was one message.
There it is. Yeah.
Different one. Every goat in Texas is praying I win. Now, this is because she's been going around saying goats aren't wives. And so every goat in Texas is praying I win. Texas has a dirty Muslim problem, and I will solve it. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And as she's saying these things that are images of the U.S. flags, AR-15, Cybertrucks draped in U.S. flags, her saying this is a goat, not a wife, and then closing text, all right, at the end of this video, Valentina with a bullet for the eye, Gomez for Congress, Texas 31st, powered by Jesus Christ, with an ichthus. Last one. They can take their dirty rugs and smelly hijabs back to their Muslim nations. I'm a fighter, not a politician. I only need the permission of Jesus Christ. This is my story. I'm a walking testimony. So,
I think that last part's true. She's a walking testimony for sure.
So this stuff is so easy to dismiss or to mock or to scorn. She's an image bearer, as is our current president. And so on the one hand, this is nonsensical. This is absolutely absurd. This is in the realm of beyond satire. And per Tim, real lives are being harmed in the midst of this sort of language. And I think the thing that I've been struck by is the threat that religious pluralism has in our imaginations, particularly our Christian imaginations, that Islam is false, it is evil. I had just a dear friend who went to war and saying, guys, I've seen the face of evil. And I believe that evil is real and it exists. No question about it. But there is this, and not this guy, but there is this undercurrent of the Muslims are taking over. And so we lose 2 National Guardsmen, and it's just a brutal tragedy. And this becomes the occasion for absolute demonization, rampant lying. I mean, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, part 2. And so I want to just talk a little bit about religious pluralism. And what I mean by that is where Christianity isn't privileged. And because that's, I think, at the core of what Christian nationalists are fighting for, that Christianity is privileged. And not just any Christianity, Protestant Christianity, not just any Protestant Christianity, it's conservative, male-oriented, white Protestant Christianity is to be privileged. Yeah. And I don't think that's a particularly woke sentiment. I think that's their own language that's, that's saying this. So I don't,
That's just reading the bio.
Yeah, seriously, Jesus is king. And I mean, even people close to me have said, hey, do you want to hear the Muslim call of prayer? I mean, is that what you want in your cities? I mean, it's a false religion. Why would you want anybody to follow a false religion? And it's true. I don't want anybody to follow a false religion. And that's why we speak out against a false version of Christianity that sees every other religion as a threat and every other religious believer as some sort of like invader. And so you're right. But I think the bigger threat to the church isn't Islam. I think it's Christians parading Jesus around and attaching his name to this utter baloney. And so I think that's where I would disagree. The greater threat to the church is this, not the Muslim call to prayer or a Muslim school board.
Jeremiah spoke in class today.
Oh, you're on fire right now. So I want to read, I've read these before, 2 Dallas Willard quotes about religious pluralism. D Willy. And it just reminds me of what the early church did. Because, I mean, we just forget. They were the most vulnerable population. They were the ones that were called invaders. And they were the ones that were lied about, that they were cannibals and they were atheists. They were the ones that were socially marginalized. And now, in the name of the Jesus, right, who created that group, we're going to socially marginalize and demonize others. It's just not It just isn't good. So Dallas Willard, so true. And read the book of Acts, friends. If you want proof of this, just read the book of Acts. Did the gospel need cultural privilege? No. In fact, when it got cultural privilege, it ceased being the power of the gospel. So, D Willy, the gospel does not require cultural privilege or even social recognition in order to flourish. God's work is not disadvantaged by persecution, even to the death, much less by mere pluralism. As Christians, we stand now in the kingdom of the heavens, and it is always true that they who are for us are more than they who are against us. It is always true that the one who is in us is greater than the one who is in the world. So we're not under threat. The gospel is not under threat. Our world is not under threat. Like, we stand in the kingdom, and yes, there is real suffering and real death. And so because we stand in the place of joyful exile, because we stand there, we can be joyfully non-participating in the ways of empire. Absolutely. Second quote.
Because it is under threat. The gospel is under threat by Christians.
Ah!
So is the planet by Christians.
Oh, Tim Stafford not holding back today.
Nope.
You immersed yourself in doom scrolling right before we got on, and this is what's happening.
No, all I did was sat down and watch Jimmy Kimmel's opening monologue from last night.
Oh, that's funny. Well, see, there you go, wokeness. All right, Dallas Willard Part 2. Christians in a pluralistic society where there is no presumption in favor of their beliefs or practices, but perhaps a strong bias against, those Christians are in the very best position to show the true excellence of the way of Christ. Come on. When Elijah called the prophets of Baal to contest them on Mount Carmel, he gave them every advantage that could be given. And when it came his turn to call for fire from heaven to consume his sacrifice, he had his altar and sacrifice flooded 3 times over with water before he prayed. The disadvantage of the water proved to be no problem for Jehovah, who answered by fire to consume the sacrifice. Now, let's go. I mean, if you just want to, what Willard's calling out is the fact that we don't believe what we're selling. We're not smoking what we're selling. It doesn't work for us. It is simply a political and social order that we're trying to enforce using religious language. It's not real for most people. Yeah, go ahead.
They're gonna the fear that's being drummed up about Christians being persecuted is going to become a self-fulfilled prophecy as Christian rhetoric gets more and more violent. Other countries are going to see white Christians as a threat, and justifiably so. So it's like it's so weird in that way.
Self-fulfilling.
With the first thing that you read from D Willy. So it's those things are always so interesting because like you have to. It's like when you were talking about when we were doing the Genesis stuff, and I was like, you have to define rain for us, right? Because our understanding of the word rain is different than I think
REIGN. Yep.
Yes, not rain from the sky, but rain from the sky.
That's funny. Well done.
Flourish, right?
Yes.
So for Christianity to flourish, so then you have to like, well, what does that actually mean?
That's
because I think that most of these people would think that having some bully in the office that is going to push people around and say Christianity is the only way and blah, 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 and be violent about it.
Yeah.
That is Christianity taking, it's like the same thing of like loving a sinner is being mean to them because you're being mean about their sin because you love them or whatever.
Right.
You bully somebody into the kingdom.
That's right.
So you see that and say like, well, this is flourishing. It's tough love.
Yeah.
And so it's like to understand what does flourish mean in regards to the book of Acts or in regards to what we're talking about, because it's not. And so with that, with the 3 categories, right? Like calling it out, grieving it, but then kind of leaning into the hope. I think our old understanding of leaning into hope would be that idea of an emotional whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just like we're sitting together in a room and we're like, well, we're grieving this, but let's give each other a hug and say that everything's good. But hope is all 3 of those categories are like daisy chained. They're all linked together. It's a circle, right? It's like they're all like, it's a conduit. So it's like, how do you manifest that, or you live into that hope sometimes by doing the first two things.
Absolutely.
And then, you know what I mean? Like, and they just keep kind of going through that current goes through. And if you break that conduit, then the current stops.
Yeah. I like that. Because one of the things that's true of lament is that laments are actually expressions of trust. If God wasn't powerful and good, then why would you say a word to him? Right? I mean, just like you, even lamenting before God assumes his attention, his power, his mercy, you know? And so biblical laments, so you would chant these in corporate worship services. These aren't like not worship pieces of literature. These are, no, absolutely. So, so the whole thing is lament. Absolutely. That's what we're doing. And again, we just have to name it, the racism. And again, I'm like, I had one or maybe two African-American people in my high school. I don't come from this, multi-ethnic like bonanza that just prepped me, or from a religious background that just prepped me to use all this language. But it's like, I don't have other language to call out what we're all seeing. I mean, this is blatantly racist language. And it's all couched in Jesus. And that's the part, I think that's the part that is the most infuriating, is not only that real people are getting hurt, but the image they're getting of Christ is a white, Republican, male, angry, AR-15 toting, mean-spirited Jesus of Nazareth. And the irony, it's insane. It absolutely is insane.
Well, I sent you and our mutual friend that sticker from school the other day that was like the word love spelled out in guns and grenades. And it's like, is this like peak irony?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even respond to it. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
Yes. So for those of you who are sitting and you're being called crazy, or you're losing friendships or whatever, we just want to say, I don't think you're crazy, and it's okay to lose friendships right now, as long as we're the ones not moving away, right? I want to love everybody regardless of what their view is on this, and I want to serve everybody. But there is a posture that we have to take that is simply not a quiet posture anymore. It's so egregious and it's so out of bounds that I just think we have to be naming it in ways that maybe we didn't have to before, or maybe we were too cowardly before. I don't know.
Man. So much of it is a lack of education too. I was just reading so much on what happens when people stop reading, and the church has had something for a long time where it just wants to be told what to think. It doesn't want to read and learn and tumble dry things and get to a point where you can discern how and what this stuff means. And I feel like I hear a lot of that in Paul's letters too. A lot of times it's just like, guys, like I'm trying to spell this out, but this is an active response to things, and you guys are, so it's like we're in that place too, where it's like all these different isms are systemic, and they are also often responses to just a lack of education. And so as we're watching literacy rates drop, I don't know if you watched the girl, Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
That whole debacle with the terrible writing, and then getting the teacher put on leave, and the teacher just so happens to be someone from the trans community. And
in the
name
of Jesus. I don't know
if you read the paper that the girl wrote. It was
horrific.
I mean, I would have failed her very quickly.
Let's go English prof.
And said, hey, but in the process of that, when I give a kid a bad grade, in my class, you're allowed to rewrite a paper as many times as you want for a higher grade.
Oh, I love that.
The reason for that is because you learn so much in seeing where you were mistaken in what you wrote or how you wrote it. And the revision process gives you, it develops the muscle in your brain. So revision is like huge. So that girl being able to take that feedback and then actually write a real paper, which she did not do.
Right.
But it's just indicative of everything. It's like, it's entitlement.
Yeah.
It's a lack of education.
Well, did you see?
It's just fear.
Did you see and they go together, right? There's the opposite circle.
Oh yeah. It's a daisy chain of.
We should be exceptional because we're America.
I held my tongue there.
Right. And we're not. I'm not experiencing what I should be experiencing as an American. And so
education wise, we're at the bottom now.
Well, and did you see, what is it? Literacy rates are 6th grade level. for adults.
They're so bad and they're dropping. And then there's another study, I think we already talked about this, but that ChatGPT users, they've already seen a 70% drop in retention rates amongst students. So it's just like we're not moving in the right direction.
No.
All that to say is like the church, if I could wish one thing, it would be like that the church would reintroduce critical thinking and involvement in the sermon centric whatever, so that people can learn how to decipher truth on their own, because they can't or they won't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say they can't. Right now it seems like most people won't. And so you have all these nefarious people who are just power grabbing, telling you what you have to do and how you should think and how you should. And then we're seeing it play out on freeways, and we're seeing it play out all over the place. And it's like we're in a rough spot that needs, again,
the church
needs an enema.
Well, and I always have to be somebody who notes my complicity in the systems. I'm not some standing in some point of higher ground critiquing all of the wrong people, and here we are in our little tower going, oh. So I always have to, when I get fired up, I always have to just go, yep, I've contributed to this, absolutely, and how, and I have to name that and grieve that. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I
don't think I'm in a tower. I'm in the swamp of sadness, watching Artax, my horse, slowly sink.
Now that is a pull. All right. Well done. I have one more comment on this. I don't know if we'll get to Lord's Prayer or not. But there's a guy named...
Got a lot of email stuff too, and things that people are
so behind. Yep.
People are engaging with this topic quite a bit.
They are. And I do think it's important we also get to the Bible stuff. That's the hope. It's like, the hope isn't that the current administration will change.
We're in the grief spot right now. We need to move over to the hope bracket.
Well, it's all the same. It's a circle that's happening all the time. And one of the things for me, I know this is true of you too, is I always thought hope and sorrow were true of different seasons. You know, I would have a season of hope and then a season of sorrow. And now they're just constant companions all the time together.
Yeah.
And, you know?
That's why movies like Inside Out were so good. Like, I don't know if you saw Inside Out too, but as somebody who's struggled with, they introduced an anxiety character. And for somebody who has struggled with anxiety their whole life, I was like, this is hitting.
Oh,
they did a good job with it. It's hitting a little too close to home. I walked out of Inside Out too, a little traumatized, but all those different emotions in those pieces that are all in there trying to figure out, they're like you're saying, they're not seasonal. They're very, it's a little team.
Yep. I want to read bits of an article in response to what's happening. So this is a guy named Chuck DeGroat, and he is an author. I think he was a pastor. I
think he still is.
Yep. He wrote a book called When Narcissism Comes to Church, but he's also written some other ones. We did a book study on his latest one. I don't remember the title off the top of my head, for our Patreon listeners, but he has a Substack and wrote an article that came out, I don't know, today or yesterday, called The Age of Cruelty. And it's so good, I'm just going to quote from long chunks of it because it's exactly what we're talking about. So forgive the reading. I know I've read a lot. D Willy, Valentina, we're reading, but I mean, it's like, I'm sorry. Sometimes people just say it. Great. All right. So this is Chuck. For as long as most my age can remember, American political life ran on a quiet but powerful agreement. Public dignity was expected. Leaders were supposed to embody a certain restraint, decency, and moral clarity, at least outwardly. We looked for presidents to speak not just to us, but on behalf of all of us at critical moments: the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Challenger disaster, Operation Desert Storm, 9/11, the death of Osama bin Laden. And if we're honest, what happened behind closed doors was often shielded by loyal staff and compliant press. Consider JFK's infidelities. Our leaders weren't necessarily icons of Christ-like character, to be sure. Their public images were curated, but the ideal mattered. Even if the reality didn't match, there was still a shared sense that certain lines shouldn't be crossed. Something tectonic has shifted, however, with Clinton's scandals cracking the facade of presidential dignity and Trump's rhetoric turning that crack into a cultural chasm where mockery, derision, and shamelessness no longer disqualify, but often galvanize. And I'm not sure we can go back or should. Today, especially in the era of Trump, public life runs on an entirely different economy, what I'd call an economy of exposure versus the economy of dignity. Over the past decade, the Trump phenomenon has normalized a level of public ridicule once unthinkable in American political life, hurling insults that demean, dehumanize, and divide, turning cruelty into spectacle, and reshaping the moral expectations we once placed on public leaders. And Trump's rhetoric. So this is the legacy that will live on. There are several that will live on far beyond him. This is one of them. And Trump's rhetoric has offered a kind of ambient permission. I think that's a great phrase, ambient permission, licensing those around him to speak with the same contempt. Cabinet officials and cultural influencers alike increasingly echo his dehumanizing language, discovering that derision attracts attention, consolidates loyalty, and grants a form of borrowed power. I think this is so insightful. It's not just that it's demeaning, but it galvanizes. I mean, that phrase, consider it, consolidates loyalty and grants a form of borrowed power. Predictably, those on the other side follow suit because, as the logic goes, the only way to fight a bully is to match his force. All that stuff in the Bible about peacemaking be damned. Cruelty has now been reframed as strength. The shadows haven't disappeared, they've simply turned into spectacle. We are witnessing not merely the breakdown of civility, but the redefinition of what moral dignity means in public life. Oh man, this is so juicy. And there are psychological reasons why this resonates culturally. I suspect that people are exhausted by the hypocrisy of the past, by the curated public virtue and private vice of earlier generations. When someone comes along who says the quiet part out loud, whose flaws are worn on the sleeve rather than hidden in a drawer, it can feel refreshingly honest. And this is what I've heard that people really enjoy about the current president. That he's honest, that he at least tells the truth. He says things to the faces of people. Back to DeGroat. And when that same person or movement promises to eradicate everything that terrifies you, immigrants, vaccines, pronouns, etc., and give you everything you hope for, prosperity, health, the way things used to be, then it's enticing. I get it. When we feel fearful or insecure in a world marked by global unrest, economic anxiety, and cultural volatility, we are always presented with a choice. One path asks us to face our fear directly, to name it, metabolize it, and allow it to mature us. So that's the process of lament. This is the slow work of wisdom, the work that eventually produces enduring character and hope. And this is the point. We can be upset about Islamic influence. We can be upset about immigration and what it's doing to our country. We can be upset about pronouns or about political correctness. That's not the point. The point is, if those things aren't lamented and named in the safe context called the church, then those things turn into anger. And that anger now has been given, in Chuck's words, ambient permission to be expressed publicly. And it's also reverse virtue signaling, right? It used to, you would virtue signal positively to say that you belong to a certain crowd. Now virtue signaling is done in this demeaning, cruel sort of tone to let a different crowd know that you belong to them. So one choice is to metabolize this, which is what we're calling grieving, and to let it shape us. The other path, he says, tempts us to bypass our fear entirely, grasping for whatever strong voice or movement promises relief. Instead of integrating our anxiety, we outsource it. Instead of deepening our resilience, we attach ourselves to borrowed power. This dynamic is as old as Genesis 3, where the human impulse in the face of vulnerability was not to trust, but to grasp, reaching for something that appeared to offer control, certainty, or protection. The ancient story reminds us that unprocessed fear does not disappear. It simply seeks a new master. And that's it. This is what lament gives us. See, lament names the stuff that's ugly about us. Like I had a friend tell me that all of a certain kind of store were being purchased around Nashville by a certain family of a different ethnicity. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, it was like, well, that's weird. Like, why? And I just had this, and not because this ethnicity is bad or whatever. It was just that it was being consolidated under a different cultural set of values. Then I was like, oh, and instead of like suppressing that or bypassing that to go straight to anger, to just sit and go, oh, well, I don't know how much of that is a legit feeling or not a legit feeling, but I definitely felt it. And God, you see that I felt it. And so God matured me to the place where I'm able to discern the right things to grieve and the wrong things to grieve. That was it. Lament is the ugly stuff. It's not just the pretty stuff. God, I wish I were more holy. Fine. Okay. Like, God, this sucks. And I'm terrified that Muslims are taking over our country. That's lament, right? In the laments, there are there are some really ugly statements made about enemies, right? Babylon, Psalm 137, read it. It's short. It's by the rivers of Babylon we hung our harps. How could we sing the songs of Zion in the presence of our enemies? And then, God, would you do to them what you have done to us? And blessed is the one who takes their infants and bashes them against the walls. And
that's biblical.
Exactly. Those human words to God have become, in a strange way, God's words to us. And they give us permission. Those aren't God's words. Those are human words. But the vast openness of the Psalm says even those words can be shared with God.
Well, that's part of it, right? Like you said, you acknowledge like an ugliness in yourself and ask God, like, can you mature, how you said that, mature me out of that or mature my heart to a place where, because it's like just, even with a lot of those laments, like, which ones did you bring up? Like lamenting a Muslim takeover or whatever, like there is so much fear laced into that. So as part of that lament process, then that you lament corporately in hopes that the truth of your Muslim neighbor comes through, and displaces the fear, which then obviously, in some respect, dismantles the need for the lament of. Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
Because what I'm worried about is that some of these churches be like, yeah, we should lament, and they all get together and they just do exactly that,
right?
Where they just like perpetuate the fear,
right?
But they do it corporately.
Yes.
But they call it lament because they're crying out and saying, oh my gosh, everything's being taken away from us and blah, blah, blah. And everyone gets all riled up.
Right.
That's but it's not lamenting. Nothing positive comes of it.
No, that's not
lamenting. But they'll call it that, right? Because
that's complaining. That's grumbling. Right.
Or it's even barely even that, right? Because it's not even based in truth. So it's like, it's something else entirely.
Right. But let's start with our ugliness. Like that's where lament starts. And so it's not just naming the truth about them out there. It's naming the truth in me and grieving that. And I don't know. So much of that moment wasn't, hey, this ethnicity is bad. I don't feel that. What I feel is I feel a loss, and I feel it. And I think this is true of a lot of us. Because as a child of the 80s, I operated under the illusion that we were safe and prosperous and good and all the things. And then I watched what my kids endure. And with social media, with the rampant immorality, that's now just the economy of exposure and spectacle, and I see what it does to them. And I find myself, if I'm not wise and sober, what I do is I spend more time wishing that they had the childhood I did, or wishing for a world that no longer exists, instead of preparing them for the one that does, or helping them live through the one that does. So there's a nostalgia bit that I think is legit, but can become an idol for us. And so I think that's what that was just man, it's so different now. And I have to go back and I have to say, okay, so there were 2 African-American kids in my high school. My town was of 3,000 people. It is so not the rose garden that I came out of it, right? Things were hidden. Absolutely. So no, so I over romanticize the past and I catastrophize the future. And that's what I do. And it comes out, if I'm not careful, it comes out in the way I treat my children. Yeah. And so my point in saying that is what lament does, if it's done in the lament tradition of the scriptures, Chuck's word here, it metabolizes it. It acknowledges that it's real. And it doesn't minimize it. It doesn't bypass it to just go to Christian cliche, because that you haven't dealt with it either. But to grieve it means to name what I'm experiencing as not ideal either. It's not just the circumstance that I'm lamenting, but it's my reaction to the circumstance that I'm lamenting to. Make sense?
Yeah, and I love that what does he call it? Borrowed power.
Borrowed power. That's exactly right. Because none of us,
a subtle little.
Absolutely. What does Jesus say to Pilate? Right? You would not be king.
Whatever you got.
Yeah. It's borrowed power, baby. Even Rome. All right. So
have you watched the Welcome to Derry show? That's like a prequel to It.
I have not.
It's so fascinating because the whole premise of Pennywise, the clown from It, is that it feeds off of fear. So it's in this town, and it only grows stronger when it's feeding off the fear of the children, who then come back later as adults. And so this is a prequel that they're writing, but the way that they're playing, the way that they're using the fear motif through the series is actually really fascinating in light of this conversation, because it's like the way in which the community drums up the fear that the entity, and they've kind of made Pennywise into something like almost a spiritual being.
Wow.
Almost like a demonic force, or like a powers and principalities kind of thing. And the way that it generates fear, and then the fear of the community as it compounds that makes him stronger and makes him more of a threat, but only because they're participating in the fear itself. So you see that, you're like, oh, this is a scary clown show or whatever, but it's not. It's a kind of an interesting commentary on how we do this as people. Exactly not what you're saying, but doing the opposite, looking out and they're using it's taking place in the 60s, and so it's very racially charged, very gender charged, very nuclear fear charged, and
commies,
all these things. So it's really kind of an interesting narrative on. Not that everybody should go watch it, because it's also very gory and could give you some spooky dreams.
But it's back to Tim Stafford and Caitlin Chess's point. Horror is the best genre to communicate religious truth.
I agree with myself.
Yep. I quote you all the time. So part of what we're trying to get at is the excavating of, and just noticing of my reaction. So when I was in therapy the last couple of years, he would just keep saying, pay attention to what's happening in your body. Just pay attention, and then just name it and be curious about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's interesting. Why does that bum me out? Oh, well, it's because I'm sort of lamenting a world that doesn't exist anymore, that is this fantasized, 80s Stranger Things-esque, sort of picture. And I don't like that my kids don't have that. And so the lament part is the bringing it to God. So already just saying, Lord, I see this, you see this, let's work on this together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think there's a beauty in that. And that's so those are the two. So the one path is the lament path of naming and grief and hoping, which he calls metabolizing and leading us into maturity. The other path is grasping. It's reaching for something that appears to offer control, certainty, and protection. And that, isn't that the worldview of MAGA, right? It's control, certainty, and protection. It's the empire playbook from Rome and probably earlier on.
I'm sure, yeah. It's recycled.
And so this last sentence, the ancient story reminds us that unprocessed fear doesn't disappear. It simply seeks a new master. But the consequences of this choice are devastating. A couple more paragraphs. Cruelty is normalized. Curiosity, empathy, and humility are demonized. Moral discernment is relativized. Those who are seen as other are further marginalized. Tribalism is incentivized, and many of us have become paralyzed, seeing no way forward through the dark morass.
Absolutely.
Oh, a lot of good ED words in there. But here's the paradox. This collapse of public pretense gives us a moment of clarity, and I think this is right. This is the hope right here. Now that the myth of public virtue has been exposed, we can no longer hide behind curated or performative morality. The appearance of dignity minus real moral substance, no matter the party. We are being forced to talk about actual character, integrity, humility, courage, truthfulness, compassion. In this Trumpian moment, the refusal to hide our shadows may be culturally chaotic, but it is also spiritually and psychologically revealing. It exposes the unmetabolized shame beneath our public life. It reveals the raw anxieties that no amount of power can satisfy. It requires us to ask if there might be deeper wells of comfort, compassion, or care beyond alignment with empire. In this Advent season, the darkness of it all might illuminate the utter irony of the Christ child in a manger, a savior utterly uninterested in bullying, bombast, and lavish ballrooms, one who forges a way, not just for some of us, but for all of us, in powerlessness, humility, and cruciform love. Come on, baby. I was like, that'll preach right there. And I'm sorry to just read that whole thing, but it's so good. I just went, and I read it this morning after assembling the This Week in Cultural or Christian Nationalism. And I just thought, dude, that's exactly how I feel, that this is a moment for the church that's really opportune and ripe. And this is what D Willy's getting at. We're in the best position to show the excellence of the way of Christ precisely when we think we're under perceived threat. That's when we show the way of Christ. When we love enemies, when we have real enemies and love them, when we have real persecutors and bless them, even when those persecutors and enemies are often people who claim the same religious figure that we do.
Yeah.
So, so good, Tim. This is, I
like that last piece in that paragraph too, with like exposing, how did he say it? Like, you're basically like the veneer of all of this, the myth.
That's right. Racism,
of the presidency and all this kind of stuff is, for better or worse, has now been stripped open. So this like living in a fantasy virtue land
That's right.
is over.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting, I will only see how that plays out after this individual is no longer in the picture, but that's an interesting idea that I think is really worth like,
and you see where lament plays
Absolutely.
into that, right? It exposes.
You see where all three of those things
totally
play into that.
Totally. So, all right. So next episode, is God the Father male? And the answer is, he's not.
Uh-oh.
I know. We're going to look at Amy Peeler's book, Women and the Gender of God. My goodness, it's a doozy. It's thick. Wow.
Love it.
But yeah, we're going to get into, we have two more Father, when we pray our Father. we got is God the Father male, and then, Father as a, identity word. So we assume an identity when we say Father, when we pray our Father, we assume an identity there. And that's freaking juicy right there.
Some of my students they found the podcast and were asking like, what's it about or whatever. And I was like, well, we've spent the last like 6 or 8 weeks. We're doing the Lord's Prayer, but we haven't made it past Father yet. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, we've spent about 6 weeks just on the word Father. And they're like,
dude, you have to be psychotic to enjoy this podcast. It's just so dumb.
I love it.
Because we could do the,
No, I hate nothing more than just a history of rhetoric, like just of hyperbole, like this, that we just kind of recite things. Everybody knows this prayer, but that's it.
But you like
not everybody, but most people like have just carried this as a thing that you recite.
Yeah.
People say it on their deathbed for some reason. Like it's like a whole thing that has lost all, like, the reason this has always been one of my favorite pieces of scripture is because it's an onion that you just keep peeling and peeling
So
and peeling
good.
and peeling. And so what Jesus did here is, like, as an English professor,
Come on.
like, endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just keeps revealing. And, like, here we are, however many thousands of years later, still revealing.
There. And it's,
So there's
yeah.
a lot. This is the magic that I think is, not overthrowing an empire, but speaking and doing things in a way. This is what I think the hope section of D Willy for
That's
me
right.
is exactly how Jesus is doing all this stuff.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
it's provocative in a way that invites you, but also, like, requests that you
participate,
partake in the answer.
That's right.
You
That's
like
right.
it, like it's
That's
just
right.
asks
It's
of
invitational.
you. And
yes.
Our faith has largely lost that, I think.
Yeah.
To ask us to participate into not just, like, going out and washing feet or whatever, but, like, actually wrestling through things and participating in seeking the answer to the question that I have asked and all that kind of stuff. So Jesus does that continually, which I think is just the most, I mean, when you think about God's project of becoming human, if part of it was to understand the human experience to some extent, which I think you can make a small argument for that.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Doing things the way that Jesus does is exactly that. Like, you are digging in and participating in the human process of life and wrestling and all of that. And that is, like, say that you are seen and known by a deity or whatever.
Yes.
That is how I think how humans are seen. That's one really big way in which humans are seen and known, is that Jesus took the time to invite you into the process and not just be like, listen, dum dum, blah blah blah, and you dum dum, blah blah blah.
Right.
Like, it's all answering questions with questions, or answering questions with onions. The chicken is in the oven.
Oh, shout out Bonnie Lewis. All right, friends. Well, thank you. And so we'll get back to is the father male? Yeah, so good. So good. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for your encouragement and support. Man, what a privilege to be a part of this. And so have a great rest of your week, or in the words of Gambus, it's a beautiful day. Don't let it get away.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Voxology Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is made possible by listeners just like you. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology Podcast, or on Tithely, tithe.ly, and just search Voxology Podcast. Links for both are in the show notes and on our website. You can interact with the hosts on Facebook /Voxology Podcast, or on Instagram at Voxology Podcast, and on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this long road with us.